I'm trying to get into the mindset of the person I was in early 1985. The winter was quite hard. It was sunny, but it was hard. There'd been very deep snow. I didn't have much money. I was doing a washing up job, and all the plans of the early year had fallen through on several fronts. We'd been supporting miners, obviously, because the miners, Mrs. Thatcher needed to break the miners in order to break the rest of the country, and she had a revenge trip going. I don't want to get into the politics of it because it's dull and it's boring, and it's horrible. But the country was a bit depressed because the miners were nearly broken, and they went proudly back to work. But the fact of the matter is they'd lost the match, and I just had a washing up job to do. I'd lost my own particular match, in as much as I had been dallying with Charisma Records, whose gov, Tony Stratton Smith, a very good old-fashioned type of 1960s pop manager, and I had taken a sort of a liking to each other. Unfortunately, Tony Stratton Smith, who championed Genesis and Van de Graaff Generator and Sir John Betjeman and all sorts of people, he understood the outsiders. The trouble was, I met him when his office was still above the marquee in Wardour Street, 90 Wardour Street, I think it was, upstairs. He gave me a fair hearing of that, and he thought I had potential, but I just don't think he had the energy for one more sort of dissident weirdo, basically. So he left me in charge of two of his henchmen who were pretty much record company people. They offered me something like a £25,000 deal. And they wanted me to make a video. Now this was around about the time, as we know, of Live Aid, and I said, look, 25 grand for a video seems a bit excessive when that seems like an awful lot of Ethiopian breakfasts to me. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, I could make a video easily for you for 5 grand, and if I could do that and come in under budget, you could give the other 20 grand to Bob Geldof's Africa Fund. And they said, Martin, you know, it's a great idea and you're a nice person for thinking it, but we can't do that. And I said, why can't we do that? So, and in the end, there was the usual prevarication, and they had to get Drowning Butterflies, which was a song that everyone loved, but no one quite knew what to do with. With Drowning Butterflies, I just thought, why don't we just sort of put a bit of compression on it and put it out? They said, well, we can't just put a record out. And I said, but you're a record company. I said, I bet, you know, if Freddie Mercury came up to you with a great idea for a single about Princess Diana, or how someone had had an affair with her, or anything like that, or just a love thing with Princess Diana in the video, I bet you'd have that out in 2 minutes, and you had it all over the radio stations all over the world. Why can't you do it with Drowning Butterflies, which is about the misery that post-industrialisation has brought to my own country, that I'm looking at all around me at the moment? I said, well, we just can't do that sort of thing. And I said, well, I can't go any further. And eventually I wrote them a letter just saying, look, I don't think I can continue this thing. I don't want the money. I just want the fucking record out. And that was where 1985 started. And it kind of went on. So I just thought, well, if I do another Cleaners cassette, we're going to sell about 100. Is it really worth it? And that Easter, somebody said to me, hey, we've got a woman who's been widowed, and she's got a house up in Whitby, and we want to, as her friends, go and paint the house for her because it's in a bit of a state, and she hasn't got the money to pay any painters, so would you like a working holiday in Whitby? So me and my partner at the time, and you know, Kathy and Bernard, who are both now gone, we drove all the way up to this place near Whitby called Ghostland, where they actually made the Heartbeat series. And we painted this house. I've never been much of a painter, so they gave me the job of ceilings, and so I had to paint 8 ceilings, sometimes like 3 times white. So I came home covered in white stuff. And we were up there for about a week, and I loved the joint, and we came home and I did some recording. I think I did Golden Lane and stuff like that. But the thing that really came out of it was Julie Profumo. Now, round about this time, my old friends from the rock band Jip, who are now called Horizontal Brian, had lost their main songwriter, the guy Tony Phillips, rather a genius songwriter actually, who'd replaced me. And I said, well, I've got nothing on, I could write you some songs. So Giles Smith and I, who had recently become friends, we used to go up to this rural studio in Suffolk, and that's how Victoria Grey came about. If it hadn't been for Horizontal Brian, etc., Jip, I would never have written. Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, this tune's very unreliable. That's how I did it anyway. It's not rocket science guitar work, it's just a detuned guitar, you know. I'm a sloppy punk at heart. I've got better over the years, but I sometimes think musicianship impedes making good records and writing songs. I'm sorry to say that, having seen some jazz bands recently, I'm still inclined to think that. The music's bloody, the playing is great, nobody writes the songs. That's why I'm supposed to be such a good songwriter. I just bypass the whole thing of being good at your instrument or musicianly behaviour, and I write good songs. Her lovely face was everywhere, someone pretending to care, the image of Victoria Grey. I had some hungry children cry. And you know, at core, 40 years later, I'm pretty much still like that. The core of that defiance and the way I think I would know how to do something really well and make you a really good record. And I probably still couldn't convince a record company to take me on, even if I wanted to, even if I presented with them and showed them my current sales and streaming figures, which are sometimes better than some of their artists. They would say, no, we don't understand this. We're going to get you a producer and make you sound a bit more like contemporary or whatever, you know. And I still think, to the whole music industry, to this day, 40 years later, the best thing I learned about that is walk away from the record company, do it yourself, and to anyone who's giving you the awards with which they present themselves, for themselves, because no other fucker's going to do it, all right? And there's one other thing about this. I've had such fun, I really have. It's been great, and I'm still having fun. A little bit slower fun now, because, you know, I do myself injuries. I've just currently got a thumb problem. I had a chest infection a little while back. I may not have too long to go, you know. Probably only another 40 years of being a pain in the arse to the people who would rule me, but there we go. Thank you. I should talk more about the record, shouldn't I, really? But that was the fever of intention and general dissidence that pervaded 1985. More next week.